the Nazi Games indeed. Hallo allemaal, daar zijn we er weer. RHTV live vanuit het mooie stad Maastricht. Ja, natuurlijk laten we het op de kaart zien. Zo. We are streaming live from Maastricht, which is in the south of the Netherlands. And of course, we're going to talk politics and geopolitics. So, let's talk geopolitics first, right? Because there's not much going on in the Netherlands. We're still forming a cabinet, even though it's taking a long, long time. But the last cabinet was 9 months, since it was formed. Ja, mensen, we gaan naar geopolitiek kijken. We gaan even kijken naar wat er gebeurt in de VN. Daar hebben we dus een Palestijnse afgezant die een speech geeft in de VN. So we're going to watch a Palestinian guy from the United Nations giving address to the United Nations. And it's very, very sad to see what's happening in the West Bank and also in Gaza. UNGA addresses Palestinian ambassador, urges immediate action against Israeli atrocities.
Mr. President, there is no greater threat to international peace and security than the commission of atrocities. And yet, for 5 months now, Israel has been committing atrocities against the Palestinian people, unchecked and unhinged. And the Security Council has been prevented repeatedly from calling for an immediate ceasefire to put an end to these atrocities. This is what we are talking about, and that's why we are here today. Stopping the daily war crimes and crimes against humanity that are integral to this Israeli assault, and putting an end to the genocide underway. Israel has unleashed death against 2.3 million Palestinians under multiple forms: indiscriminate bombing, summary executions, disease, dehydration, and starvation. Starvation is not an unfortunate consequence of the war. It is one of the methods of war used by Israel. Israel is starving our people. The people besieged, bombarded, killed, and maimed and displaced. Israel is starving our children, orphaned, disabled, terrorized. Have you seen the images of Palestinian children as their lives were taken away? Or their limbs? Have you seen them shivering, scared, scarred? Have you seen them being starved? Mahmoud Fattouh died of acute malnutrition. He was 2 months old. Yazan al-Kafarne was a lively boy. He has been lying on a hospital bed for days, barely able to move. he died of malnutrition today. He was killed by Israel using starvation as a weapon.
When it comes to children, right, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to protect my kid. I'm going to protect my child. But what can you do when you are starved out, right? You have no home anymore. And the bombs are dropping. What can you do? Wat kan je doen om je kind te gaan beschermen als de bommen vallen en jij zelf geen onderdak hebt? Dit gebeurt. Dit gebeurt. En ja, ik wil niet zeggen, ja, we moeten geen kant gaan kiezen. We mustn't choose sides, right? You know, but what's happening in Gaza, it's criminal. It's really criminal. Het is echt crimineel wat er in Gaza gebeurt. Kinderen die net in het leven komen, die staan op het rand om weer te sterven. Echt heel, heel erg triest. So, this is happening in Gaza, right? People are being starved out and they're also targets. Yeah. And I speak out for the Palestinian people, right? I speak out for them. Someone has to. Now, we are not affiliated with Hamas or whatever, you know. We do not want violence. That is what we don't want. We want peace in the Levant, right? If you want to make one state, make one state. But, you know, no apartheid anymore. Not anymore. Not on my watch. Right? Ja, mensen, maak er maar één staat van. Maar ieder gelijkwaardig aan de wet. En geen apartheid meer. Die tijd is al lang, lang voorbij. Yeah. So, this is happening in the United Nations. And we're going to take another 2 more minutes.
Look at our children. Look at Yazan. Look what agony they are enduring. Dozen more children who died of malnutrition have been identified, and many more have died and are dying in darkness.
Very, very sad thing to see. But we speak out, you know. I'm not for the Palestinians, I'm not against them, right? But this is inhumane. This is inhumane. That girl had a future. And she died because she got no food, right? She used to have a future, and now the future is gone. Yep. Very, very sad thing to see what's happening. But there are also other stuff to mention, such as the war crimes that Israel is doing, the flower massacre. Now, let's take a look at Richard Medhurst, who's back on YouTube.
People started rushing towards the trucks, which is, you know, understandable given that they're being starved to death in a genocide. The Israelis began opening fire at them. They killed over 100 people and wounded 750 people. I mean, you know, if this had happened in Europe, if this had happened in Paris, if this had happened in Berlin, what kind of reaction do you think that would elicit? 750 people wounded, over 100 killed. I mean, it's a massacre. And it's just one of many massacres. Almost every single day you're having things like this happen. Maybe not on the same scale, but certainly hundreds being killed every day in the most horrific fashion. And someone in this flour massacre, it's called flour because they were rushing just to get flour, you know, because people are eating animal feed in Gaza. I did an hour-long video on that in the last live stream. You know, that one person was crushed with a tank, and I'm not going to show you the photos because it's so bad, you know, but they were, I mean, what can I say? What can I say after these things? So even the BBC came out and debunked what the Israelis were doing. Even CNN. This massacre was so bad, even the mainstream media couldn't cover for the Israelis. And I say that with a small disclaimer, because if you look at the headlines, if you look at the language that they're using, they're still covering for them. You know, this headline from the BBC, for example, which says, "What video and eyewitness accounts tell us about Gazans killed at aid drop?" This is extremely, I mean, it sounds so scientific, and you know, I mean, I wouldn't have written that like this. If Palestinians had done that to Israelis, you know, I bet you anything you like, this headline would be different. It should say, you know, hundreds of people wounded, over 100 massacred by Israeli forces. That is the simple headline. And then, of course, inside you can explain to us the you know, how you arrived at this conclusion. But
of course, they don't do that. You know, dit gebeurt. Ze verdraaien gewoon de woorden en zoiets van, ja, het was een fatale vergissing. Oops, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. You're not sorry. You committed war crimes. You know, very, very sad thing to see. But we are just lookers on history, right? Every moment is a historic moment, and this has consequences for, say, English politics. Dit heeft consequenties voor Engelse politiek. If we look at George Galloway, he won a by-election in Rockdale, and now he is sworn into Parliament, right? So we're going to take a look at George Galloway sworn into Parliament yet again, the 7th time, I believe. Voor de 7e keer zit hij in de House of Commons. En ja, ze zijn erg wantrouwig naar George Galloway. Yeah. They're very distrustful of George Galloway, right? The English media is in a panic mode.
Order. Will members wishing to take their seats please come to the table?
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
you do get to wonder, what does he get to fill in? You know, isn't just his name, right? So here he is, George Galloway, now a member of the House of Parliament for Rockdale, right? And we're going to take a look at some media questions for George Galloway.
So I hope, and I think the Hansard writers hope, that I'll add to the political intelligence quotient in the Hansard writers' entry, and I hope to get the opportunity early to make the interventions that I plan to make. I will attempt to speak in the Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, and if I don't succeed, I will stay on and try to speak in the budget debate. I'm unlikely to be chosen for both, of course. So I hope you'll hear from me on Wednesday, and I'll have plenty to say about Rochdale, about England, about Britain, and about the international situation. I think that we stand at a very dangerous crossroads in our country's affairs, perhaps as dangerous as any since the summer and autumn of 1940-41. My constituency of Rochdale is one of the poorest in the whole country, where once Rochdale was one of the richest towns in the whole country. Its heart has been taken out, its economy has ebbed away, and it's my job to try to make Rochdale great again. I know some of you don't like that slogan, but Rochdale was great, and why should it not be great again? Well, the people of Rochdale voted for me. That's the first and obvious point to make. And it's not for the unelected Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to pick the MP in Rochdale. The people of Rochdale have that prerogative, and they exercised it very clearly with a thumping majority in which the governing party didn't even come second.
Now, you may question yourself, right? What did George Galloway say? An unelected prime minister? Yes, he was unelected. He was selected, right? We had the disaster of Theresa May. We then had that other political snake. What's his name? Boris Johnson, right? And then we had another prime minister everyone forgot, and then we had Rishi Sunak. You know, so these people are selected, right? They're not elected. They're selected from the political party.
Rochdale great again. I know some of you don't like that slogan, but Rochdale was great, and why should it not be great again? Well, the people of Rochdale voted for me. That's the first and obvious point to make. And it's not for the unelected Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, to pick the MP in Rochdale. The people of Rochdale have that prerogative, and they exercised it very clearly with a thumping majority in which the governing party didn't even come second, and actually only got a tiny handful of votes, were soundly beaten not just by me, but by the independent candidate that none of the media even mentioned in the course of the by-election campaign. So it's frankly horrifying that we have a government so bereft of public support that they cower, frightened of calling the general election that this country badly needs.
So you have an independent candidate who no one has ever heard of, right? Just some Joe Blow standing up against the whole corrupt system. and George Galloway, and you have the Labour Party, the Tory Party, stuff like that. And everyone voted for Joe Blow and George Galloway, right? This is very, very exceptional. And they are scared. And who are they? Not Parliament, right? That's just an extension of the world government, basically. They are scared. The world government is scared. The shadow elites, they are scared, right? Anyone can go into politics and get a lot of votes if you have the intention of sacrificing yourself towards this system, right? Iedereen kan de politiek ingaan en ja, je moet maar lef hebben om tegen het systeem te gaan vechten. So Chris is not a fan of Galloway. Well, you know, he is quite an important figure in English politics. So, and he won Rockdale. So that is something, you know, it's very, yeah, for the seventh time, right? Seventh time. So who knows what will happen in the English politics? People are fed up with the political parties, and they go for the independent. Now let's take a look at America, right? What's happening in America? Now, Colorado wanted Trump off the ballot, and the Supreme Court had said, nope, we're not going to do that, Colorado. So Trump is going to make a statement.
I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision today. It was a very important decision. We're very well crafted, and I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together, which our country needs. And they worked long, they worked hard, and frankly, they worked very quickly on something that will be spoken about 100 years from now and 200 years from now. Extremely important. Essentially, you cannot take somebody out of a race because an opponent would like to have it that way. And it has nothing to do with the fact that it's the leading candidate, whether it was the leading candidate or a candidate that was well down on the totem pole. You cannot take somebody out of a race. The voters can take the person out of the race very quickly, but a court shouldn't be doing that, and the Supreme Court saw that very well. And I really do believe that will be a unifying factor, because while most states were thrilled to have me, there were some that didn't, and they didn't want that for political reasons. They didn't want that because of poll numbers, because the poll numbers are very good. We're beating President Biden in almost every poll. New York Times came out yesterday with a very big poll for us. So they didn't like that, and you can't do that. You can't do what they tried to do. And hopefully Colorado, as an example, will unify. I know there's tremendous support. They brought our support up very strong in Colorado, because people in Colorado thought that was a terrible thing that they did. And while we're on the subject, and another thing that will...
If we look at the comments, go Trump, suburban wife for Trump, Trump come back, the boss, Trump 2024, MAGA Trump to the moon.
Will be coming up very soon will be immunity for a president, and not immunity for me, but for any president. If a president doesn't have full immunity, you really don't have a president, because nobody that is serving...
You can do a president's job without breaking the law.
...in that office will have the courage to make, in many cases, what would be the right decision, or it could be the wrong decision. It could be, in some cases, the wrong decision, but they have to make decisions, and they have to make them free of all terror that can be rained upon them when they leave office, or even before they leave office. And some decisions are very tough. I can tell you that as a president, that some decisions to make are very tough. I took out ISIS, and I took out some very big people from the standpoint of a different part of the world. Two of the leading terrorists, probably the two leading terrorists ever.
You took out Soleimani. Remember that? Soleimani, the Iranian general in Baghdad. Yeah, you took him out. You know, and that was a very big mistake, because Iran will never, ever forget that. Right? Now, I'm not for Iran, but Soleimani was basically fighting off the ISIS terrorists in Syria and Iraq. Right? He was a very, very important general in the Iranian army. And that will never, ever be forgotten, right, by Iran. So, you know, you're distancing yourself from Iran, you know. And, you know, Iran is not my favorite country, but still, they also have their influence within the region, right? Iran supports Hezbollah, for example, and Hamas, and, you know, the Houthis, for example, right? They have influence within the region. So, let's see what else we got here. Oh, yeah, Soleimani, right? So let's take a look at Soleimani, who he actually was.
The centre of Baghdad was brought to a standstill on Saturday as tens of thousands of people lined the streets for the funeral of the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani and the other people killed by a US drone strike on Friday. Mourners carrying flags of militia groups chanted "America is the enemy of God" as they received the funeral cortege in the Kadhimiya district. The body of General Soleimani is to be returned to Iran for further funeral ceremonies. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has visited the general's family in Iran to pay his respects. The authorities have promised to make America pay. The US is deploying an additional 3,000 troops to the Middle East. David Willis reports.
American officials say the airstrike that killed Qasem Soleimani was carried out in self-defense. They say the man who's been blamed for the deaths of hundreds of Americans in the Middle East over the years was plotting a major attack on US diplomats and military personnel. At a rally last night in Florida, President Trump said that threat had now been lifted.
Qasem Soleimani has been killed, and his bloody rampage is now forever gone.
He was fighting ISIS, right, and other destabilizing forces within the region, which we as the West supported, right? So if you think that's complex, we're also going to show you Rand Paul, who gave a speech about Turkey and Sweden and Finland. So we're going to dig that up. What basically happened is Turkey, had a strong hand on the table, and they said, we want jet fighters. And basically, they bribed the U.S. into giving jet fighters. So we're going to take a look at that. There we go. Justin, Rand Paul moves to block off F-16 to Turkey in exchange for Sweden's ascension to NATO.
The senator from Kentucky.
What we have here is a clear case of quid pro quo. If Turkey releases its hold on Sweden's membership in NATO, then Turkey gets America's F-16s. You may remember the last time we had a famous case of quid pro quo here. Boy, everybody was all up in a lather and they said we have to impeach Donald Trump because it's a quid pro quo. Apparently it depends on what the quid is and what the quo is. Quid pro quo, though, is actually more the norm than it is actually the exception. The speakers you've seen here today were adamantly against Turkey and adamantly against them getting the F-35 because they possess a Russian defensive weapon system that may well allow exploitation and allow Americans to become more vulnerable. But now they're adamantly for it because they got Sweden into NATO. Thank God Sweden's in NATO. We can all rest easy. Rewarding Turkey, though, with the sale of $23 billion worth of F-16 fighters, though, has some repercussions, and we should think about it before we do it. I maintained that there are deep concerns about the sale, as it was initially proposed way back in 2021, and I've maintained my opposition, given Turkey's dismal human rights accord, its unreliable behavior as a NATO ally, and its disruptive military actions in the Middle East, the Caucasus, and the Eastern Mediterranean. Congress must not serve as a rubber stamp for President Biden's side deals. The quid pro quo to expand NATO should not come at the expense of rewarding the alliance's most embarrassing member. President Biden pledged to center U.S. foreign policy on the defense of democracy and the protection of human rights. But Biden's own State Department issued a human rights report for Turkey in 2022, which identifies significant human rights issues, including arbitrary killings, suspicious deaths of persons in custody, forced disappearance, torture, arbitrary arrest, and the continued detention of tens of thousands of persons, including opposition politicians, former members of parliament, lawyers, journalists, human rights activists, and even an employee of the U.S. mission. Doesn't sound like one of our best allies. The Human Rights Foundation of Turkey, a non-governmental organization operating out of Ankara, reports that some 1,130 individuals were subjected to torture and other forms of mistreatment while in custody or at extra custodial places, meaning not jail, some out-of-the-way place that no one can see where the torture happens. And this sadly also includes the torture of children. In March 2023, it was reported that a 14-year-old boy on his way home in southeast Turkey was stopped by the police with no justification. He was subsequently abducted and subjected to torture. The police beat him with their guns and, according to the boy's lawyer, tried to force him to say, "I am a Turk, a curse upon the Kurds." When he refused, the police instructed him to memorize the Turkish national anthem by the next day, threatening to shoot him if he failed to do so. The police then bound his hands and threw him into a swamp before local villagers, hearing his cries for help, rescued him and brought him to the hospital. The State Department's report also identifies, our State Department identifies severe restrictions on the freedom of expression and assembly in Turkey, violence and threats of violence against journalists in Turkey, increased censorship, criminal libel laws, and unfortunately much more. Since 2014, it is estimated that more than 160,000 people were investigated for insulting Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and more than 35,000 went to trial. Imagine if it was a crime in the U.S. to criticize the president, how many people would be in jail? Of these trials, 12,881 individuals were convicted, and 3,625 people, including 10 children, were sentenced to prison. While Erdogan is imprisoning men, women, and children for insulting him, he's openly praising Hamas.
He's basically a sultan, right? And he has absolute power. So, you're not allowed to criticize Erdogan or stuff like that, or you will end up in prison, right? When people are actually defending this. So, but the thing here is, Turkey is a NATO member, and Finland and Sweden wanted to join NATO, right, because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. So, and Finland and Sweden both support there is this group, the PKK, right, the Kurdish separatist movement, So Sweden and Finland both supported those groups. And Turkey said, wait a minute, you want to join NATO? You have to, stop supporting these terror groups and stuff like that. And on the world stage, they say, okay, Sweden wants to join. The U.S., you got to give us some jet fighters. We need new, jet fighters and stuff like that. So, but the hard thing is, right, the U.S. is deployed in Syria. Now, the U.S. has allies in Syria, which are the Kurds, right? And the Kurds are both, two groups basically. You have the Arab Kurd and the Christian Kurd, right? But these are allies of the U.S. And Turkey sees these Kurds as enemy, right? So Rand Paul is going to explain that as we now have, some vision on the ground. Wait, there we go.
So these people come to the floor and they say, oh, we were against giving the planes to Turkey before we were for giving them. And we don't like that Turkey gives to Hamas, but we're playing real politic here because we want Sweden in NATO. And whether Turkey gives money to Hamas, we're going to turn a blind eye. That to me is a quid pro quo not worth taking. After Hamas's brutal October 17th attack on Israel, Erdogan defiantly claimed Hamas is not a terrorist group, it's a liberation group. You think we should be sending our best weapons to a country that said after one of the worst terrorist activities in modern history, October 7th, Hamas is not a terrorist group? Should we be sending our prized F-16s to a country that says Hamas is not a terrorist group? It's a liberation group, Mujahideen, waging a battle to protect its lands and people. No, they went to a concert and killed young people. And we're going to send our weapons to them? Why? Because we made a quid pro quo. We got Sweden in NATO. So we're going to look the other way with Turkey giving money and support to Hamas. Is this the type of government we want to send our weapons to? Shouldn't the United States require countries to reflect our values before we send them billions of dollars worth of advanced weapons? Shouldn't we demand that a NATO ally in particular at least respect the rule of law and basic human rights? President Biden certainly doesn't seem to think so. The United States cannot proudly proclaim human rights to be at the center of our foreign policy.
People just don't care, Oh, Russia is bad. Oh, they're invading Ukraine, right? But if we look at what Erdogan is doing within his own region, the northeast of Syria and Iraq and parts of Iran, he's been attacking that, right? He's been attacking this whole region which is northeast of Syria, the north of Iraq, and the east of Iran. So he's been attacking this whole region here, and no one has said a word about it. No one. And whilst the U.S. is, giving him support, he is giving Azerbaijan support by giving the planes that he got from the U.S. Right? Now, this is the Russian Caucasus, Azerbaijan, Armenia. We know about Nagorno-Karabakh, right? A region that was Armenian within Azerbaijan, and the Azerbaijani took that region over, and many lives were lost, and a lot of Armenians are back in Armenia Prime, basically. So this is all happening, and we have another link. We're going to check that out. This is about Gaza. Wait.
That there will be a next meal for themselves, for their family members, and that's what we're trying to do. Jen, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It was just to follow up on the security point. I mean, how much of a factor is the bombing of police forces that were securing these convoys by the Israelis in what has happened since? Because we know what a problem that has caused. These police, as far as I understand it, are sometimes unarmed. They contain remnants that are still loyal to Fatah, not all Hamas, and they have been hit. And that seems to have been a huge factor in them no longer being willing to secure the convoys, which has led to this complete drying up of aid, particularly being able to get to the north, and therefore part of the problem that with the terrible event we saw on Thursday. So how much of a factor was Israel doing that in what's now happened?
It is a significant factor, and the point that we have made to the government.
The terrible event
what's important
that happened.
That
yeah, right.
Distributed from the warehouses at Rafah, the warehouses at Kerem Shalom, or just inside the Gaza border.
People don't care. People do not care. And over here we have someone from the State Department and trying to explain something you cannot explain. Right? First you give humanitarian aid after you starve them out, and then suddenly the truck that has flour, that has all these products, gets shot. Many Palestinians have died. Right? They're targets. This is why Israel does this. It's a very, very sad thing to see. So, yeah, it's the same as the white helmets. You guys remember that, the white helmets in Syria, right? So first you had a proxy, right, a terrorist group within Syria, and they were bombed the hell out of the city, right? And then you had an organization called the White Helmets, which were the proxies that took over the town, right? So when the White Helmets came, they were back, they were back. And who supported the White Helmets, right? The Netherlands, of course. So this is happening. This has been happening for ages, and We're still reporting on it. If we look at Iraq, for example, right, the parliament in Iraq and the prime minister had said, US, you guys have stayed here long enough, you need to go. There's a big military base north of Baghdad where there are still Americans in the thousands, and they are sitting ducks basically because Iran did not forget the death of Soleimani and are targeting that military base, right? So for every nail there, for every hammer there's a nail or something like that, right? So it's really amazing. What are you guys doing over there in Iraq? What are you guys doing in Syria? Go away. You know, these people don't want you there, right? It's only costing lives. Very, very sad thing to see. And the US is just planning on invading countries, you know. Really, really sad thing to see. We have that General Wesley Clark, right, who told about 7 countries that will be taken out in 5 years. So, yeah, we're going to take a look at the countries that are being mentioned. I believe it was Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen, or something like that, right? So we're going to take a look at what Wesley Clark had to say. Uh, 7 countries within 5 years. Here we go.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Oh, we forgot Sudan.
The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa.
Exactly. The countries would be left alone. You know, it's like, oh, you guys got oil, we need your oil, you know, we're going to wage war for your oil. People don't really know why there was a Syrian civil war, right? So we're going to show that on the map. It's all about energy, right? Keep that in the back of your mind. It's all about energy. So we have Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Here we have Qatar and Saudi Arabia, who both made a deal under the table, you know, for a pipeline that goes to Turkey, right? But the pipeline, the Turks were like, okay, you know, fine by me. That's Erdogan for you, right? He seems like a friend, but then he turns and he's your enemy, and then he turns and then he's your friend again. That's Erdogan for you, right? So they made a deal under the table, excluding Syria, right? Syria had no idea about the pipeline. So Assad, whether you like him or not, had said, no, there's no pipeline going through Syria, right? So when he found out, he stopped that. And there was this incident that happened in Homs. 2 kids got shot, and the whole country was upset. Mass demonstrations, right? And this is a power vacuum. So when that happens, the proxies took over. They came from Turkey, right? Most came from Turkey and the Russian Caucasus, and invaded Syria basically during the mass demonstrations. And they were shooting at government people and civilians and stuff like that. And then you have a Syrian civil war, right? So this is what happened in Syria. And these proxies are still in Syria, in parts of Syria. It's a frozen conflict. The next conflict would take place in Ukraine, right? The east of Ukraine. So in 2014, there was a coup in Ukraine. The eastern part said, we're not going to take part within this coup. We are going to be autonomous states within Ukraine. And Ukraine said, nope, you're not going to do that. We are going to take you over. And basically, since 2014, there has been a fight to take those regions over, right? And those regions, Kharkiv and stuff like that, they asked for Russian help. So Russia intervened. That was 2 years ago. And there was this peace deal made in Turkey, the deal in Istanbul, but the UK said, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep on fighting. And Ukraine is basically losing this war. So France and England and basically those two are sending their troops, right? There's like NATO, but you also have your own troops. They're sending their troops to Ukraine. So very, very complex situation there. We also have Moldova, where there's a region, a breakaway region called Transnistria. Now, Transnistria is aligned with Russia. And they asked for Russian support within that region. So, and Russia is not willing yet to give support, but you know, it's a hot spot. It's a hot spot. So Turkey is not really the trustworthy partner, because they're giving the jets to Azerbaijan, who are attacking Armenia. Now, Armenia is part of the CSTO, or maybe they aren't anymore. You know, the CSTO is the Russian counterpart of NATO, right? You have an alliance of countries, and Armenia is one of those countries that are in the CSTO. And the thing with Nagorno-Karabakh, you know, the Russians were supposed to give support to Armenia, but they could not, because their focus is now in the east of Ukraine, right? So now we have Armenia maybe splitting away from the CSTO and being a part of NATO, right? Another extension of NATO. Georgia also wants to be part of NATO. Now they have also a breakaway state, which is more Russian aligned. And, you know, it's this part here. South Ossetia. There we go. And that is more Russian aligned. So there's a lot happening, a lot shifting, right? We have the elections coming up, the European elections in the third week of March. And, you know, who knows? Maybe we'll see right-wing parties come into power within the European Parliament. We do see that within the European member states, right? So this is all happening, and we independents are kicking ass, as we saw in Rockdale, England, right? So let's see if we can get the results. I don't know the name of that other guy. By election results. Let's see. We can change the course of history, you know, because David Tully, independent. No one has ever heard of David Tully. Now, let's see who this guy is. Is a vehicle repair shop owner from Rockdale who is notable for coming in second place in the 2024 Rockdale by-election, right? So he's a mechanic, and you know, maybe it was a joke. You know, he went to the neighbors and was in a pub or something like that. And, hey, you know, maybe I'm gonna run for Rockdale. Yeah, you almost won, man. David Tully, you almost won, right? And this is the power of the individual, right? He's a repair shop owner, right? He didn't want to go into politics or something like that. You know, he saw it as a moral duty for his country to make change within the political system. And he almost did. He almost did. So that is a very good thing to see, that most English people say bye to Labour by to Tory and the two leading parties and the Conservatives, of course. So I believe this old geezer died, which is the reason why there was a by-election in Rockdale. So, yeah, there you have it. There's a lot going on, people, a lot going on in the world. Are we paying attention? Well, I am, you know. And yeah, we are live almost every day talking about Gaza and other conflicts in the world. We also highlighted Sudan, right? And anyone can do this. You know, anyone can do this. If you have the moral support and also the moral, you know, the moral highway you take, you know, people have to stand up, speak out, you know, because what's happening in the world is very, very sad. And people need to speak out more. So let's Charlie Veach, Ollie the Octopus. There. We love Ollie the Octopus. We also love Charlie, even though, you know, he's turned on certain topics.
Okay. You rolling?
Hello, this is Ollie the Octopus.
Hi, here we are outside the US Embassy. I'm about to play my song. It's called They're Going to Get You. We're filming them because they film us. If you don't renew your tax disc, you'll be driving at your own risk. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. They can use their Jedi mind tricks, psychometric biometrics. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. CCTV in your clamshell turning in the grave of Orwell. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. DNA no longer your own because they've mapped out your genome. Be careful what you say when you're on the phone because they know where you live. Them when you're on your own. Daddy's what you do. There's Prozac in the water. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. Don't start a revolution. They'll get you with their air pollution. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. Because we think we are paranoid. Their forces are still deployed. They're going to get you. They're going to get you. They get your details in adult view. Now they know you. They're going to get you. Careful what you say when you're on the phone because they know where you live. And when you're on your own, 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 on your own. I'm gonna go over here for the last verse.
Nice one.
Good afternoon.
I work for the Police Entertainment Unit, here to make your day
up for them, it's not hard, so look your best on your ID card. They're going to get you, they're going to get you. They can make your life live in hell if you even mention Roswell. They're going to get you, they're going to get you. You can join in if you want. They're going to get you, they're going to get you. They're going to get you, they're going to get you. They're going to get you, they're going to get you. Be careful what you say when you're on the phone, because they know where you live when you're on your own. Be careful what you say, be careful when you're on the phone, because they know where you live, they know when you're on your own. Be careful what you say when you're on the phone, because they know where you live when you're on your own, 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 on your own.
You are allowed to clap. Ollie the Octopus, thank you very much for that. Sorry, just to explain, if I may, you probably don't know about the Police Entertainment Department, but it's a group of us, and what we do various things to kind of cheer up the police and get them a bit more connected to us, the ununiformed. And one of the, I'm actually the head of the police hugging department. Yeah, all right. And no hugs? You're not up for a hug? Hugging makes the world a better place. Can we hug you? For a hug, sir? Can we please hug you? No? But it's only a nice hug. It's just a hug. We're all beautiful and unique snowflakes of Mother Nature and all the rest of it. No?
We are beautiful and unique snowflakes of Mother Nature. And I was kind of searching for the words, right? The moral, and Barry said moral compass. Well, yeah, moral compass. People are so confused. So before we close off, right, we're going to show a video of someone riding a horse, which is not really a horse.
Springen en zo lopen. Stokpaard, dat lijkt natuurlijk wel een beetje op een paard, maar een hobbyhorse die is super realistisch en die wordt eigenlijk helemaal nagemaakt van echte paarden. Eigenlijk alle hobbyhorses die krijgen wel een naam, die krijgen een shownaam, die worden gepoetst, die krijgen soms zelfs een eigen stal. Daar wordt echt hartstikke goed.
So this is a horse that is basically not a horse, but you know, it's really weird. People are so confused nowadays, you know. This is all happening. Strange world that we live in, right? Strange world. Ja mensen, we gaan er vandoor. Dus morgen zijn we er weer. Doei doei. En we zien ons later.